I'm Sophie, and I'm with Ethan, the love of my life, a year ago. Our connection was funny, kind, and all I could have ever imagined. I'm quite content with my family life. I was an accountant who worked primarily from home. Though there was more to my work life than what first caught the eye, I liked my job. Ethan was quite busy running his own car parts company, but it also gave us a lot of quality time together. We enjoyed spending time together in our leisure time, and we frequently went to parties with Ethan's wide network of friends, co-workers, and business associates. I always enjoyed the opportunity to mingle and be a part of Ethan's world, so I looked forward to these get-togethers. Ethan walked in one bright Saturday morning and grinned from ear to ear while I was reading emails and drinking coffee at our kitchen table. "Hi there, lovely," he murmured as he kissed my cheek. "Daniel is hosting a cookout at his residence. I had the idea that we could go over, meet up with everyone, and have a few drinks. Are you game?" I immediately said, "Sounds perfect," anticipating the evening. By the time we got at Daniel's place at 7:00 p.m., the air was filled with laughing and the aroma of cooked meat. I saw a beautiful blonde woman I had never seen before as we moved through the crowd. She was laughing across the yard as she spoke animatedly with a group of individuals. "Who's that?" I questioned Ethan. His face tensed almost slightly as he nodded at her. "That's Isabella, my ex-girlfriend," he added. Before I could say anything, Daniel saw us and gave us a wave. "Ethan and Sophie, I'm happy you could attend. Let me present you to everyone, please." Isabella fixed her gaze on us as we got closer to the group. Her eyes did not open up with a widening smile. With a fake sweetness in her voice, she remarked, well, if it's not Ethan and his wife." She spoke the word wife like a vulgar term. Determined not to let her get to me, I faked a grin. I extended my hand and said, "Nice to meet you, Isabella. I'm Sophie." She gave my hand a dirt-covered glance and turned back to stare at Ethan. "Oh my goodness, Ethany, it's been too long. I need to know what you've been up to." When she called me by that pet name, I was upset, but Ethan handled it so nicely. "Isabella, it's nice to see you. I had a terrific time with Sophie. What say you? Continue to work for your father's business?" Isabella's smile wavered briefly. "Yes, you are familiar with me. I prefer having alternatives available to me. I'm not bound, in contrast to certain individuals." This was how the conversation went on for what seemed like hours, with Isabella gushing over Ethan and sparing me with veiled digs. Even though I tried my hardest to remain composed, I was worn out by the end of the evening. I noticed Isabella was showing up at our social gatherings more often in the weeks that followed that initial encounter. She always seemed to go above and above to make me feel uneasy and out of place. We were at a dinner party one Friday night, given by one of Ethan's business partners. Isabella strolled up with a champagne flute in hand as I was having a conversation with a few of the spouses. "Oh, Sophie," she said in a sickly sweet voice, "what an intriguing ensemble that is." I had no idea that the librarian aesthetic was making a comeback. Suddenly self-conscious, I looked down at my knee-length skirt and top. Trying not to laugh, I said, "I think it's appropriate for a dinner party," in response. With a sound like tinkling glass, Isabella laughed. "You do, my dear, of course. Not everyone is as adept at wearing high couture as I am." I bit my lip to keep from criticizing her attire for looking more like something you'd see at a nightclub rather than a dinner gathering. Rather, I excused myself and go in search of Ethan. Week by week, Isabella's actions got more audacious. She began sharing pictures from our get-togethers on social media, making sure to always exclude or obscure my face. The captions were blatant comments regarding my demeanor or style of living. One day, I was going through my feed when I saw a rather offensive post. Isabella had posted an ugly photograph of me next to a picture of herself. "Who do you think is a better match for Ethan?" was the caption. "Comment with your vote." The majority of the comments were supportive of Isabella, and as I went through them, I felt my cheeks flame with rage and embarrassment. She had written, "Seems like the people have spoken," at the bottom of the post. Plain Jane is more attractive than I am, so Ethan must be a total moron. When Ethan arrived home from work that evening, I made the decision to speak with him about the circumstance. As Ethan entered the room, I remarked, "Ethan, we need to talk about Isabella." With a groan, he undid his necktie. "What's she done now?" Using my phone, I showed him the post. His expression grew serious as he paged through it. His words were hardly audible. "This is unacceptable. I'll speak with her. Tell her to remove it." I said, "That's not enough," in a rather trembling voice. "Please advise her to avoid coming near us. I no longer want her to attend our events." Feeling uneasy, Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "I can't do that, Sophie. She is a significant business partner's daughter. I'm not able to just bar her from social gatherings." "So what, I'm just supposed to put up with her bullying me?" My voice rising, I asked. Ethan hugged me and replied, "Of course not. Look, I'll speak with her and let her know that this conduct is unacceptable. But you have to realize that I can't ignore her totally without jeopardizing my business ties." I started to become frustrated and moved away from him. "And Ethan, how about our relationship? Does that not matter?" "Obviously it does," he remarked, appearing wounded. "You are aware that you are my sole love. Isabella has passed away. Remember that I choose you." Even though his remarks were supposed to reassure me, I couldn't get rid of the impression that our troubles weren't over yet. That night, as I was going to bed, I couldn't help but wonder whether our idyllic existence was beginning to fall apart. Weeks went by, and Isabella's actions became more and more blatant. She appeared to make it her goal to get under my skin and closer to Ethan at every event or party. We attended a cocktail party one evening that stands out in particular that one of Ethan's co-workers held. Feeling secure and at ease, I had picked out an attractive black dress that was basic yet classy for the event. That sensation passed quickly. Isabella strode into the room, her skin-tight red dress leaving little room for interpretation. Her gaze instantly fell on Ethan, and she headed straight toward us. Her words, "Ethan, darling," were spoken without acknowledging my existence. "You look absolutely dashing tonight." Before any of us could reply, she put her hand on Ethan's arm and gave it a kind pat. "Care to dance with me for old time's sake?" Though my blood started to boil, Ethan managed to free himself from her hold with ease. "Thank you, Isabella, but my wife and I are here. Perhaps at a later date." There was a little rush of victory that I couldn't help but feel as we left. I observed Isabella's continuous attempts to get Ethan alone throughout the evening. She would give him a call to talk business or to beg for assistance with some made-up issue. To Ethan's credit, he turned down her approaches each time, making sure to include me in the conversation or come back to my side right away. However, the unceasing attention was becoming taxing for us both. Not the respite that was hoped for throughout the next 2 weeks. Isabella started making more regular and noticeable attempts to sabotage our relationship. On Ethan's social media, she would make thought-provoking posts that often brought up their shared past. She used to talk loudly at gatherings about how much they had loved one another, making sure to leave me out of the conversation. But the actual blow-up happened at our friend Tom's birthday celebration. Isabella came, ostentatiously late, in a dress that seemed more fitting for a red carpet event than a backyard cookout. She grinned as she came in, making eye contact with me. She shouted out, "Oh, Sophie," her voice brimming with insincere worry. "You miserable creature. Have you missed the memo? This isn't a gathering of the library book club." The crowd erupted in laughter, and I felt the blushes on my cheeks burn. Ethan hurried over from his conversation with other coworkers to stand at my side. "That's enough, Isabella," he replied in a low, furious tone. "You need to stop this childish behavior." Isabella's pretend innocent eyes widened. "Ethan, why?" "Merely attempting to assist. Your small bride has to be shown how to dress for these occasions by someone." I felt something damp and chilly slip through my garments before Ethan could answer. I was shocked to find crimson wine smearing across the front of my dress as I looked down. Isabella was standing in front of me with an empty glass in her hand and a look of mild regret on her face. "Oh no," she said. "How foolish of me. However, that stain is much better than that awful dress. To be honest." The gathering quieted down, focusing on us. Standing there with wine streaming off my clothing, I felt angry and ashamed. However, everything inside me exploded as I saw Isabella's arrogant expression. "You know what, Isabella?" With a clear and firm voice, I spoke. "I'd rather wear this soiled dress than waste any more time acting politely toward you. You are acting in a pitiful and shameful manner. If you'll excuse me, my husband and I are leaving." Ethan was gazing at Isabella with a mix of disbelief and disdain when I turned to face him. I said, "Let's head home." Isabella's high-pitched voice could be heard behind us as we made our way to the exit. "Ethan, my love, please stay. I'll take good care of you if you stay." Ethan did not even look back. He wrapped his arm around me and declared, "My wife is the only person I want to take care of me," loud enough for everyone to hear. "Isabella, goodbye." I couldn't help but sense that a boundary had been crossed as we silently drove home. Now that Isabella had revealed her true nature, there was no turning back. Ethan entered our bedroom one bright morning with a sullen attitude. He said, "Sophie, I have to go on a business trip. It is crucial for the business. I'll be away for around a week." I tried to ignore the little knot in my gut as I nodded. "All right. When are you going to depart?" "Tomorrow morning," he answered. I apologized for the brief notice. It sprang out of nowhere. I feigned a laugh. "It's all right. I'm aware of how significant your business is." When Ethan departed for his vacation the following day, I was left alone in our home. I was so mired in work that I didn't notice the empty house as the week went by slowly. My phone started ringing on Friday night. I was shocked to see it was Isabella. She said, "Sophie, darling," in a voice that was sickeningly lovely. "Tonight, I'm planning a little gathering. Merely a cluster of 8 people. Ethan and you should come, please." I wavered. Ethan's out of town on business, actually." Isabella said, "Oh, what a shame," without even quite seeming unhappy. "Yet you ought to still attend. We'll have a terrific opportunity to get past our differences and start over. How would you respond?" Although my gut told me to say no, I couldn't help but be intrigued. "I'm not sure," I nervously said. "Oh, please," Isabella insisted. "It's located at El Chateau. You do realize where this is? Extremely exclusive. I swear, it will be enjoyable." I could feel my lips curling into a grin at the name of El Chateau. I quickly answered, "All right," after considering my options. "I'll be there." "What time?" inquired Isabella. 8 o'clock, I stated. "Don't be late." Exactly 8 in the evening, I entered El Chateau. I noticed Ethan and 8 of his buddies, including Isabella, seated around a table in a happy group. I had a fleeting hope that things would work out, but my heart fell as I got closer. There was no spot at the table reserved for me. With a glare in her eyes, Isabella got to her feet. "Oh, Sophie," she said, sounding phony yet worried all at same. "I fear there's been miscommunication. Look, we're packed up here. Not enough space for extras." She turned around, flaunting her high-end gown. "Sophie, this is a place where people belong. Lovely people, prosperous people. The diner across the street could be worth a try. They make mean hot dogs, I've heard." There was a sudden silence at the table, with everyone appearing uneasy, but saying nothing. I chuckled, taking great pleasure in Isabella's pitiful attempt at embarrassment. "Excuse me, could I speak to the restaurant manager, please?" I yelled as I turned around. The restaurant manager came over to our table with a kind and professional manner. His gaze shifted between Isabella and me as he said, "Is there a problem here?" I gave the manager a grin before Isabella could say anything. "There is absolutely no issue. I simply wanted to know whether I could come to supper with this beautiful company." The manager gave me a warm grin. "Obviously, ma'am. I'll go grab you a cozy chair right now." Isabella's face twisted with wrath as he raced off. "Pardon me. This table is reserved for 8 people by me. There isn't place for her here, and she wasn't invited." The manager reappeared and set down a soft chair at the table. Madam has the right to sit at any table she chooses. I regret for any misunderstanding this may have caused. After all, she is El Chateau's owner. Around the table, there was a collective gasp. Ethan's pals stared at me in shock as Isabella's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Tom was the one who spoke first. "However, Sophie, I mistook you for an accountant. That's how Ethan first got to know you." I shrugged my shoulders shyly and smiled. "My profession is accounting. I handle the restaurant's bookkeeping. I've never been one to flaunt their money. I think it's better to assess people based on their morals rather than their wealth." Isabella's cheeks flushed a dark scarlet, a mixture of shame and rage. There was a sharp change in the atmosphere around the table. Having remained mute throughout Isabella's outburst, Ethan's buddies suddenly jumped at the chance to offer me to hang out with them. "Please have Sophie sit with us. We would adore learning more about your eatery. It's unbelievable that we were unaware of this about you." I smiled softly and raised a hand. "I appreciate the invitation, but I believe I will turn it down. All I wanted to do was pop over and say hi." I faced the manager. "Please see to it that my husband's friends are well looked after. Tonight, I'm footing the cost." I couldn't resist adding, "And Isabella, there's a lovely diner down the street," as I was about to leave. "They make mean hot dogs, I've heard. Perhaps you should give it a try sometime." I left the restaurant after that, leaving Isabella completely embarrassed and in shock. I informed Ethan about the event over dinner a few days after he got back from his work trip. "Ethan, you ought to have seen her face," I chuckled. "I don't think I've ever seen anyone turn that shade of red." Ethan laughed and shook his head. "It's unbelievable that she believes she could make you feel that uncomfortable. Sophie, you handled it flawlessly." I had a wave of contentment as we were finishing our supper. Isabella's plan to make me look bad had failed miserably, and in the process it had strengthened our bond. The weeks that followed the event at El Chateau passed quickly. Life had become comfortable again, and the story of Isabella's humiliation had become just one of those funny dinnertime stories that Ethan and I would sometimes tell one another. While sorting through my emails one cool autumn morning, I came upon a curious note, an offer to take part in the Esteemed Entrepreneur of the Year award program. More precisely, the Successful Entrepreneurial Debut category was received. Reading the descriptions made my heart skip a beat. This was a noteworthy acknowledgement of my efforts and accomplishments with the business. We chose to go to the function as a group. We looked our best the evening of the awards. Ethan looked stunning in his tux, and I went with a classy yet modest dress that gave me a strong, certain feeling. There were many of the most prominent and successful people in the city at this magnificent location. As we socialized, I recognized a lot of faces, friends, acquaintances, and a few of Ethan's business partners. The air was charged with excitement and expectation. Ethan left me near the champagne fountain at one point so he could have a conversation with some co-workers. A familiar voice screamed in my ear as I was taking in the elaborate ice sculpture. "What are you doing here?" I turned to see Isabella looking at me, a mix of bewilderment and rage on her face. "I was invited," I said coolly, holding out my invitation to her. Isabella's gaze grew strained. "Ours is an occasion for the prosperous and accomplished citizens of our city, people much like my father and me. It's not where you belong, you prick. You try to smuggle yourself into our world. Before you cause yourself embarrassment, leave." I kept my cool and scanned the room until I saw the person I was searching for. Grinning, I gestured to two dapper-looking elderly guys chatting away across the room in their immaculate suits. Isabella's diatribe persisted as they got closer, but I ignored her and concentrated on the men. I gave one of them a nice embrace when they got to us. I gave him a cheek kiss and said, "Dad, I'm so glad you could make it." I turned to face the other man and held out my hand, which he shook kindly. "Mr. Thompson, it's wonderful to see you again." When Isabella recognized the identity of the second man, her mouth fell open. Her voice harsh with astonishment, she turned to face him. "Hey, Dad, what are you up to? With this nobody, how can you possibly be friendly?" All she is an accountant playing at being one of us because she got lucky. Her place in our world is not here." As he listened to his daughter's scream, Mr. Thompson's face became deeply crimson. His normally cool, calculating eyes were suddenly blazing with rage. Isabella flinched as he bellowed, "Silence." He made an indication to my dad. "This is William Carter, a highly successful businessman in the nation and a valuable business associate of mine. Your naive remarks have the potential to ruin a multi-million-dollar agreement." As her eyes became wide with amazement, Isabella did not back away. On the contrary, she doubled down. "Then, Daddy, back out of the transaction. Her family is not someone we have to do business with. They are not worthy of us." Anger mottled Mr. Thompson's face, causing crimson patches to form on his forehead and cheeks. Heads turned around the ballroom as his voice reached a yell. "Enough now. Your actions are unacceptable." He gave Isabella a quick finger poke. "You're disconnected as of right now. Consider yourself evicted. No more credit cards, no more allowance, and that opulent apartment of yours." With a tone of urgent apology, Isabella's mouth fell wide in shock as her father turned to face us. "Mr. Carter, Sophie, please accept my deepest apologies for this disgraceful scene." He snapped at Isabella and turned back to face his daughter. "Go now. You have shown that you are not deserving of being here." With a mixture of worry and rage on his face, Ethan charged through the group of people gathering around us at that very moment. He insisted, "What's going on here?" He saw Isabella and shook his head in contempt before anybody could reply. "I ought to have been aware. Isabella, I can now clearly recall why I ended our relationship. You have never been taught how to act appropriately in public." Isabella eventually lost her cool. Her cheeks started to well up with tears, trailing mascara everywhere they went. She cried, "Daddy, please," and reached for Mr. Thompson's arm. "I apologize. I was ignorant. Don't do this, please." Mr. Thompson, nevertheless, brushed her hand aside. "I have business to discuss with my partners." He turned away from her and stated in a chilly manner, "Goodbye, Isabella." Isabella stood by alone in the center of the floor, mascara running down her cheeks and her shoulders trembling from tears as Mr. Thompson and my father left. The group surrounding us gradually thinned out, leaving her alone with her embarrassment. The remainder of the evening seemed to fly by. I remember being very stunned when my name was mentioned for the Successful Entrepreneurial Debut category at the awards event. I saw Ethan and my father in the audience as I got the medal. With a proud smile on their faces, they stood up and began to clap enthusiastically. Their excitement was contagious, and I experienced a wave of happiness and achievement. The weeks after the awards ceremony saw life settling into a comfortable new routine. The golden figurine became a discreet memento of that memorable evening and was placed on our mantelpiece. Ethan and I kept going to parties with his business partners and friends. These parties became much more pleasurable without Isabella's poisonous presence. There was more real talk, a lighter environment, and more regular laughter. One evening, when I was putting on my earrings, Ethan approached me from behind as we prepared for yet another social gathering. He put his arms around my waist and remarked, "You know, I've noticed how much more fun these parties have become lately." I gave him a grin in the mirror. I had the exact same thought just now. It's incredible how the absence of one person can alter the dynamics completely. Ethan gave a contemplative look as he nodded. "Speaking of absence, have you heard anything about Isabella lately?" I gave a headshake. "Not really. She seemed to have entirely disappeared. But, well, during the previous party, I heard Tom chatting to his wife. There's a story circulating that Mr. Thompson moved Isabella to a different state because he didn't want her to cause him or the family company any more shame." Ethan's eyebrow shot up. "Whoa, it is rather pronounced. But given her actions during the awards ceremony, I can't say I'm shocked." I looked up at him and straightened his tie. "It's extremely unfortunate. She was never taught to value or exercise her status sensibly." I thought about how much my life had changed in the last year as we traveled to the celebration. It had been an intense ride, filled with everything from the difficulties I had with Isabella to the surprise acknowledgement of my financial ability. Nevertheless, my bond with Ethan had only gotten stronger throughout it all. Regarding Isabella, I sincerely hoped that she would finally find her path. Everyone deserves the opportunity to develop and become a better version of themselves. After all, who knew? Perhaps a new beginning in a different state would be just what she needed. I was happy to be in this moment, though, for the time being, swaying in my husband's arms, surrounded by friends, and appreciative of the life we had created together.